reading from the Gospel according to Matthew. And Jesus said to them, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall not commit adultery.' But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out, throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off, throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to go into hell. It was also said, 'Whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce.' But I say to you that anyone who divorces his wife, except on the ground of unchastity, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery." The word of the Lord. I think in my personal experience as a priest, as a pastor to people navigating the trickiness around what it is to try to be a faithful follower of God in this world, this one section of readings is among the trickiest for people. And I think I would say among the most misunderstood, at least based on my scholarship. It comes down to the debate that I hear frequently had between people who try to take the more conservative approach to Jesus or the more liberal approach to Jesus. And this idea of whether Jesus came as a replacement of the law or whether Jesus came to fulfill the law. You'll see this is a debate that was happening even right there in the moment in Jesus' time. He himself has to keep correcting people and saying, "I did not come to replace the law. I came to fulfill the law." And then you have people, some of his very own closest followers, like Paul, immediately pointing out and saying how in one case, he says Jesus was the replacement of the law. He's the new law. And in other places saying Jesus did not replace the law. So you can't blame us for being confused about it. There's the approach of saying what Jesus came to do was actually strengthen and make it more conservative for people to say, you've had these rules, but in order to be a faithful person, I'm going to make the rules harder on you. More stringent. And I hear that in the language of, you have heard don't commit adultery, but even if you look at a woman, you're committing adultery. That does sound like a more conservative approach at first. Although it's important to remember, Jesus in this same gospel is the same one that says to the Pharisees, the problem is you heaping on burden upon burden of people and weighing them down with these onerous laws. My yoke is easy, my burden is light. So that would seem to indicate that Jesus is not trying to just heap upon more restrictions on them. And then you certainly have the approach of people saying, in a sense of trying to argue that it's a far more liberalizing, Jesus was trying to get rid of some of these tough laws and just make it about being a good person, loving God and loving our neighbor, following the spirit of the law instead of the letter of the law. But these readings seem to run counter to that. All this is to acknowledge, it does sound like a tricky situation. But what I would lift up to you is this is my argument, that Jesus is not trying to be more liberal or more conservative. Jesus is not trying to make the laws either weaker or looser or more restrictive. Jesus is encouraging us to take the laws seriously. And what is the law? The law is that we are supposed to love God and love one another. And anytime we are looking at the rules of the law and in a legalistic way trying to dance around them to justify not loving our neighbor or loving God and saying, we don't have to love that person, this person doesn't count, we can find a transgression and give us wiggle room, we're not taking the law seriously. Love your neighbor. And Jesus is having none of that. None of us dancing around trying to be legalistic about it. But at the same time, when we are using the laws as a way to be restrictive and punishing and judging of other people, Jesus doesn't want that either, because that's not taking the law seriously. That's just using it as a cudgel or as a weapon. What Jesus is trying to get us to do, I believe, and this is pretty consistent throughout the Gospels here, is to say, I'm not trying to make the laws harder or to take them away. I want you to just take it seriously. Love God and love each other. And if you are faithfully loving God and loving each other to the best of your ability, and not trying to figure out how to either get away from the law or how to use the law for your own devices, but instead you are asking yourself, how should I be loving God? How can this guide me and help me in loving one another? Then you'll be aligned with the Jesus who came into this world, again, not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. Not to heap upon a heavy yoke upon us, but to have a yoke that was easy and a burden that was light. Love God. Love your neighbor as yourself. Thanks be to God. Amen.